Millbrook had always been a city of glass and water, its tall buildings adorned with reflective windows and its numerous fountains and rivers offering serene mirrored surfaces. But lately, a strange phenomenon had gripped the city. People were noticing that their reflections were missing. It began one early morning when Mrs. Henderson, a longtime resident of Millbrook, walked into her bathroom, flicked on the light, and stood before her mirror. She reached for her toothbrush, still groggy from sleep, and glanced up. Her reflection wasn't there. Startled, she stepped back and rubbed her eyes, leaning in closer to the mirror, but all she saw was the empty bathroom behind her. She laughed nervously, dismissing it as a trick of the light, or perhaps a need to clean the glass. She hurriedly finished her routine, avoiding the mirror's gaze. As the day progressed, more reports surfaced. John, a local shopkeeper, found his reflection missing in the storefront window. At the cafe, patrons stared into their coffee cups, the usual dark surfaces devoid of their reflections. Social media lit up with photos and frantic messages. Theories abounded, ranging from mass hallucinations to government experiments. A sense of unease began to spread through the city like a dark cloud. Jack, a passionate photographer who had recently moved to Millbrook, heard the rumors. He had always been fascinated by reflections, finding them to be a captivating subject for his work. When he saw the first panicked posts online, he decided to investigate. Grabbing his camera, he set out to document the phenomenon, hoping to capture the essence of what was happening. As Jack roamed the city, his camera clicking incessantly, he found reflective surfaces everywhere. Car windows, shop fronts, puddles from the recent rain, all devoid of human reflections. The absence felt eerie, like the city itself was losing its soul. He captured the ghostly emptiness, the unsettling normalcy of a world without reflections. The photos felt haunting, each frame more disturbing than the last. Jack's first stop was the city center, where he photographed the gleaming glass buildings. The reflective surfaces, usually bustling with the vibrancy of city life, now showed only empty streets and clear skies. He moved on to the park, aiming his lens at the large pond where children usually played and adults sought tranquility. The water was still, perfectly mirroring the trees and sky, but no human figure disrupted its surface. The emptiness was palpable. As the sun began to set, Jack ventured to the older part of town. He found an old barber shop with a large, ornate mirror in the window. It had always been a favorite spot of his for its vintage charm. He framed the shot carefully, ensuring the intricate details of the mirror's frame were captured. As he snapped the photo, he felt a chill. When he reviewed the image on his camera, he noticed a shadowy figure lurking in the corner of the frame, almost imperceptible but undeniably present. Disturbed but intrigued, Jack continued taking photos late into the night. He walked through the quiet streets, feeling as if unseen eyes were watching him. Every mirror and reflective surface seemed to hold a silent secret. When he finally returned home, he developed the photos in his darkroom. As the images appeared, his unease grew. The shadowy figure was present in more shots than he had realized, always on the periphery, always watching. Sleep came uneasily that night. Jack's dreams were filled with dark reflections and shadowy figures. He woke several times, each time feeling a cold presence in his room, though he saw nothing. The next morning, with the city still abuzz with the mystery of the vanishing reflections, Jack resolved to dig deeper. The shadowy figure in his photos couldn't be a coincidence. He felt certain that if he could understand its nature, he might uncover the truth behind the missing reflections. Determined, Jack prepared for another day of investigation. He packed his camera bag, grabbed his notepad, and set out with a growing sense of urgency. The city needed answers, and he was determined to find them. As he walked through the streets, his mind raced with possibilities. Little did he know the truth he sought would lead him to confront an ancient, malevolent spirit and unravel a mystery far deeper than he had ever imagined. Jack's determination to uncover the truth about the vanishing reflections led him to the heart of Millbrook's history. He spent the morning at the city archives, a dusty building filled with old newspapers, historical records, and forgotten tales. The air was thick with the scent of aging paper, and the silence was broken only by the soft rustle of pages turning. Jack pored over microfilm and yellowed clippings, searching for any historical events or local legends that might explain the current phenomenon. After hours of sifting through mundane news and community announcements, he stumbled upon a series of articles from the early 1900s. They chronicled a similar occurrence: reflections disappearing, people feeling watched, and a growing sense of dread. The articles described the events as the Mirror Plague, and mentioned an old legend about an evil spirit that stole reflections to trap souls. According to the legend, the spirit fed on the life force of the living, drawing them into its realm by severing their connection to their reflections. Jack felt a chill as he read the accounts of panic, culminating in a town-wide ritual intended to banish the spirit. The articles ended abruptly, with no clear resolution. With this unsettling information, Jack realized he needed more first-hand accounts. He decided to interview elderly residents who might remember the stories passed down through generations. His first stop was Mrs. Delaney, a sprightly octogenarian known for her sharp memory and love of storytelling. Mrs. Delaney welcomed Jack into her cozy home, offering him tea and cookies. As they sat in her living room, surrounded by family photos and mementos, Jack explained his investigation. Mrs. Delaney listened intently, her eyes growing wide with recognition as he recounted the vanishing reflections and the shadowy figure in his photos. "My grandmother used to tell us about the Mirror Plague," Mrs. Delaney said, her voice trembling slightly. "She said an evil spirit roamed the town, stealing reflections to capture souls. The townsfolk were terrified. They performed rituals and hung blessed mirrors to keep the spirit at bay." Jack leaned forward, eager for more details. "What kind of rituals? Do you remember any specifics?" Mrs. Delaney nodded. "They would gather at the town square, light candles, and say prayers to ward off the spirit. My grandmother said they also used blessed mirrors, which were believed to repel the spirit's influence. She kept one of those mirrors in our attic for years." Inspired by Mrs. Delaney's story, Jack visited Father Brennan, the local priest known for his interest in the paranormal. The church, with its high ceilings and stained glass windows, felt like a sanctuary against the growing unease. Father Brennan greeted Jack warmly, listening carefully as he recounted his findings. "Mirrors and reflections have long been thought to be portals to other realms," Father Brennan explained. "The spirit you describe may be using these portals to siphon the life force of the living. The blessed mirrors could indeed serve as a defense." Father Brennan gave Jack a small, ornate mirror that had been blessed during a recent ceremony. "Use this mirror to confront the spirit," he advised. "It should help repel its influence and might give you a chance to capture its image more clearly." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack prepared for his confrontation with the spirit. He chose the riverbank, one of the most reflective places in the city. The water, usually calm and mirror-like, now held an ominous silence. Jack set up his camera and positioned the blessed mirror by the water's edge, its surface gleaming in the fading light. He waited, the air growing colder as darkness fell. Hours passed, and Jack's resolve began to waver. Just as he was about to give up, a ripple disturbed the still water, and a shadowy figure emerged from the river's surface. It hovered above the water, its form shifting and flickering like a mirage. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he lifted his camera and began snapping photos. The blessed mirror glowed faintly in the moonlight, and the figure seemed agitated by its presence. Jack could see the spirit more clearly now, a dark, amorphous shape with eyes that glowed with an eerie light. He felt a mixture of fear and fascination, unable to look away. The spirit moved closer, its form becoming more defined. Jack's fingers trembled as he continued to take photos, each flash capturing the spirit's image. Suddenly, the entity lashed out, a tendril of darkness striking the mirror and shattering it into countless pieces. Jack stumbled backward, falling to the ground. The spirit loomed over him, its presence overwhelming. In a desperate move, Jack reached for his camera and began taking pictures again. Each flash seemed to weaken the entity, its form flickering with each burst of light. The spirit let out a high-pitched wail, its movements becoming erratic and desperate. With one final blinding flash, the spirit disintegrated, its form dissolving into the air like mist. Jack lay on the ground, panting and shaken but relieved. He had confronted the entity and seemingly defeated it. As he looked around, he noticed the reflections slowly returning to the river's surface. The city's reflections were coming back, and the nightmare appeared to be over. Exhausted but hopeful, Jack gathered his equipment and headed home. Little did he know, the true horror of his situation was yet to be revealed. The spirit's influence was far from gone, and Jack's battle with the darkness had only just begun. Jack's relief at seemingly vanquishing the spirit was short-lived. Though the city appeared to be returning to normal, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. Reflections had returned, but they felt different, more distant, almost hesitant. Jack's encounter with the spirit haunted his thoughts, and the shadowy figure from his photos lingered in his mind. Determined to ensure the spirit was truly gone, Jack decided to revisit the riverbank where the confrontation had taken place. As he approached the site, the air felt colder, the surroundings eerily quiet. He set up his camera once again, this time with an array of equipment designed to capture even the faintest paranormal activity. Infrared sensors, a digital recorder, and a new, larger blessed mirror provided by Father Brennan. As night fell, Jack waited by the river, the only sound the gentle lapping of water against the shore. Hours passed without incident, but Jack remained vigilant, scanning the area for any sign of the spirit. Just as he began to think the spirit was truly gone, the temperature dropped sharply, and a thick fog rolled in from the river. Through the fog, Jack saw it. the shadowy figure, more defined than before, emerging from the water's surface. The air grew heavy, pressing down on him like a physical weight. Jack raised his camera, snapping photos as quickly as his shaking hands would allow. The flash illuminated the figure, revealing a grotesque, shifting mass with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through him. Jack lifted the new blessed mirror, aiming its reflective surface toward the spirit. The figure recoiled, emitting a guttural, almost human wail that echoed across the water. The mirror glowed brightly, its light intensifying as the spirit writhed in apparent agony. Determined not to let the spirit escape, Jack advanced, holding the mirror steady. The spirit's form flickered, growing more erratic with each step. Suddenly, a tendril of darkness lashed out, striking the mirror with such force that it cracked. Jack stumbled but managed to keep his grip, using the mirror to push the spirit back. With one hand on the mirror and the other on his camera, Jack continued to take photos, each flash of light further weakening the entity. The spirit's movements became frantic, its wails louder and more desperate. Jack could feel the air crackling with tension, the energy around him reaching a crescendo. Finally, with a blinding flash, the spirit let out a final, piercing scream and disintegrated, its form dissolving into the air like smoke. The mirror shattered completely, the fragments falling to the ground in a cascade of light. Jack fell to his knees, exhausted and shaken, but victorious. As he gathered the broken pieces of the mirror, Jack noticed something unsettling. His hands, reflected in the shards, appeared ghostly and translucent. Panic set in as he realized that while he had defeated the spirit, it had left a mark on him. His connection to the physical world was weakening, just as Mrs. Delaney and Father Brennan had warned. Over the next few days, Jack's unease grew. He found himself checking his reflection constantly, each time fearing it would be the last. The strange occurrences continued, his reflection flickering in mirrors, his presence feeling more and more insubstantial. Friends and acquaintances began to act strangely around him, their memories of Jack growing hazy. One evening, while developing his latest photos in the darkroom, Jack noticed something horrifying. In the final image where the spirit had disintegrated, there was a faint, ghostly outline of himself. The spectral figure seemed to be trapped within the photograph, its eyes reflecting a deep, otherworldly sorrow. Jack's heart pounded as he examined the negatives, each one confirming his worst fear. The spirit had not been vanquished. It had merely transferred part of itself into him. By confronting the entity, Jack had unwittingly become a bridge between the worlds of the living and the dead. He was slipping into the spirit realm, his existence in the physical world slowly fading away. Desperate for a solution, Jack visited Father Brennan once more. The priest listened gravely as Jack recounted his latest findings. "I'm afraid the spirit has marked you," Father Brennan said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "You are caught between worlds now. Your reflection is a sign of your presence in the physical world. Without it, you're slipping into the spirit realm." Jack felt a cold dread settle over him. The blessed mirrors had only delayed the inevitable. His battle with the spirit had come at a terrible cost. As the days passed, he could feel himself becoming more and more insubstantial. The people around him began to forget his name, his face, his very existence. One night Jack stood before his bathroom mirror, staring at the empty space where his reflection should be. He felt an overwhelming sense of loss and resignation. With a final wistful look at the world he was leaving behind, Jack closed his eyes. When he opened them, he found himself in a shadowy, mirror-like world, surrounded by the faint outlines of others who had been claimed by the spirit. Jack realized he was now part of the spirit world, no longer visible to the living. He wandered this new realm, a silent observer, forever documenting the thin veil between worlds. The city's reflections remained intact, but Jack's story became a forgotten legend, a whisper in the annals of Millbrook's history. Jack awoke in a place that felt both familiar and alien. The spirit world mirrored Millbrook, but it was a dark, twisted version of the city he once knew. Shadows danced unnaturally, and the buildings seemed to stretch and contort as if viewed through a warped lens. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the distant echoes of forlorn whispers. As Jack navigated this eerie reflection of his home, he felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. The streets were empty, the city devoid of life. He encountered other spirits, their forms translucent and flickering, moving aimlessly through the shadowy landscape. These were the souls the spirit had claimed, each one a ghostly reminder of the city's dark history. Jack's determination to understand his new existence propelled him forward. He explored the spirit world, his camera always at the ready, documenting the spectral city and its inhabitants. Through his lens, he noticed patterns and signs that hinted at a deeper connection between the living world and this shadow realm. One night, Jack found himself drawn to the old barber shop with the ornate mirror, the same mirror where he had first seen the shadowy figure. In the spirit world, the shop was shrouded in darkness, its once vibrant colors muted and cold. He stepped inside, the bell above the door ringing with a hollow, distant sound. Inside the barber shop, the mirror stood as it had in the living world, but its surface was dark and foreboding. Jack approached cautiously, his reflection faint and ghostly in the glass. As he stared into the mirror, he saw the faint outline of the shadowy figure once again, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The figure spoke, its voice a chilling whisper that seemed to echo from all directions. "You thought you could escape me, but you are mine now. Your soul belongs to the spirit world." Jack felt a cold dread wash over him, but he refused to give in to fear. He lifted his camera and took a photo, the flash momentarily illuminating the figure. In that brief moment, Jack saw its true form, a twisted, dark entity with eyes that burned like coals. "You cannot defeat me with your camera," the spirit hissed. "Your reflection is gone. You are trapped here forever." Jack's mind raced as he considered his options. He remembered the stories Mrs. Delaney had told him, the rituals and blessed mirrors that had once kept the spirit at bay. Perhaps there was a way to use the spirit world against itself, to turn its own power back on it. Determined to find a way out, Jack left the barber shop and continued his exploration. He visited the town square where the old rituals had taken place and found the remnants of candles and symbols etched into the ground. He studied them, taking photos and making notes, piecing together the ancient rituals that had once protected Millbrook. As he delved deeper into the spirit world, Jack began to notice subtle shifts. The spirits he encountered seemed more aware of him, their ghostly eyes following his movements. He realized that the spirit world was reacting to his presence, recognizing him as a threat to its dominance. One night, while exploring the abandoned church in the spirit world, Jack discovered an old, tattered book hidden in the shadows. The book contained detailed descriptions of the rituals used to banish the spirit, along with illustrations of blessed mirrors and protective symbols. It was the key he had been searching for. Jack set to work, gathering the necessary materials from the spirit world's twisted version of Millbrook. He collected candles, drew symbols, and crafted a makeshift blessed mirror using fragments of glass he found scattered throughout the city. Each step brought him closer to confronting the spirit on its own turf. With everything in place, Jack returned to the riverbank where his final confrontation with the spirit had taken place in the living world. The spirit world's version of the river was dark and foreboding, the water a deep, inky black. Jack set up his ritual, lighting the candles and placing the blessed mirror at the water's edge. As he began the ritual, the air grew cold, and the shadows around him deepened. The spirit emerged from the water, its form more solid and menacing than ever. It let out a guttural growl, its eyes fixed on Jack with a burning intensity. "You cannot escape me," the spirit snarled. "You are mine." Jack held the blessed mirror up, its surface glowing with a faint light. He recited the incantations he had learned from the book, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his heart. The spirit recoiled, its form flickering and distorting as the mirror's light intensified. The air crackled with energy, the tension mounting with each passing moment. The spirit lashed out, but the blessed mirror repelled its attacks, the light growing brighter and stronger. Jack continued the ritual, his voice rising in defiance. With a final, blinding flash, the spirit let out a piercing scream and disintegrated, its form dissolving into nothingness. The mirror shattered, the fragments falling to the ground in a cascade of light. Jack collapsed, exhausted but victorious. As he lay on the ground, the spirit world around him began to shift. The shadows lifted, and the ghostly figures of the trapped souls started to fade. Jack felt a strange sensation, as if he were being pulled back into the living world. He closed his eyes, letting the sensation wash over him. When he opened his eyes, he found himself lying by the riverbank in Millbrook, the city bathed in the soft light of dawn. His reflection in the water was faint but present, a sign that he had regained his connection to the living world. Jack stood up, feeling a profound sense of relief. He had defeated the spirit and restored the balance between the worlds. As he looked around, he saw the city waking up, its residents unaware of the battle that had taken place. Jack knew that his experiences would stay with him forever, a reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead. He returned home, his camera filled with images of the spirit world, each photo a testament to his journey. Though the shadows had been banished, he remained vigilant, knowing that the spirit world was never far away.